Welcome to the Darkstream. Voxday, voxday.blogspot.com, Streamlabs All-Star. Thanks for tuning in tonight. It's a hot evening here, so I may have to keep it a little bit short just so I can turn my fan back on. But I wanted to address something that is kind of connected to an older video that we did a few months ago called Why No One Likes You. And one thing that I've noticed, I was talking about this with someone earlier today, is that at some point in time, and I'm not sure exactly when, but at some point in time after the early 1990s, and I don't know exactly when it started, but it's become very, very common. I suspect it has something to do with the internet, but I don't actually know. At some point in time, people began to act as if failing to understand the obvious was somehow a indicator of intelligence. And you see this all the time. I see it a lot myself on the blog and so forth. Oh well, we'll just leave this down there. And I find it befuddling. I don't understand what the reasoning is. As far as I can tell, it seems to be striking a superior pose and implying that the other person cannot effectively communicate what they're saying. So I can't really find an explanation for it that isn't just based on either pointless attention seeking or, frankly, an obnoxious sort of implied insult. And let me give you an example, because I find it very frustrating to deal with this sort of thing over and over and over every time you say anything. And so, for example, I tell people, never talk to the media. Don't talk to the media. If they're talking to you, they're doing for this. They're going to either use you as an example of their narrative, or they're going to destroy your reputation, and all this sort of thing. And so, you've got the one problem where people say, oh, well, what about this exception? What about that exception? I literally get at least one email a week, every week, saying, well, the media wants to talk to me about this. Is that okay? And I always say, what part of never talk to the media do you not understand? Everybody seems to be so desperate for fame or something that they don't want to give up that momentary attention or something. But that's really beside the point. What is directly related to the point that I'm talking about is I inevitably get questions about, well, what about, why do you talk to Alex Jones? You say never talk to the media, and yet you go on InfoWars. Okay, well, setting aside the media thing, Alex Jones and InfoWars are an important outlet that sells alt-hero comics. They already sold through all their initial order, and they've already had to order more, and they're already ordering alt-hero number 3. So why would I not talk to an important retail outlet? The guy is working with us. He's doing us a huge favor by being one of the first retailers to pick up our comics, and they're doing a fantastic job of selling them. And I'm going to not talk to him because InfoWars can be legitimately described as media? Well, I've got some news for you. This can also be described as media, you know? And people say, well, Mike Cernovich and Stefan Molyneux, they could be considered media. Jesse Lee Peterson could be considered media. This is media. This, if you look it up in the dictionary, you'll see that this is also media. I am not telling you not to talk to your USB sticks. Okay? This is not that difficult. The reason that you don't talk to the media is because the mainstream media is because they are the enemy of the people. The reason that you probably shouldn't talk to the conservative media either is because the conservative media, and I'm talking about the conservative movement media, they are, the little brothers of the enemies of the people. They are the mini enemies of the people. And so, the important thing to understand is not to talk to people who are using you as a piece to fit in the puzzle that assembles their narrative. Okay? Now, I can go ahead and get as pedantic as you like. If we want to go deeply down and get very, very specific and that sort of thing, I can do that. But I don't want to. And I especially don't want to do it every single time I open my mouth. And so there seems to be this belief that if you can somehow come up with some possible interpretation that allows you to pretend to be confused as to what the person says, this is somehow a sign of your intelligence. It's not. It's a sign that you're a jackass. It's actually a sign that you're not very intelligent because clearly you're not able to understand the context. Now, I'm not saying that if you're genuinely confused that you shouldn't ask. Obviously you should. But the correct way to pose such a question is to assume the obvious and then ask to confirm that. That's the way you do it. That's the way intelligent people do it. One of the signs of intelligence is to understand things when you're only given partial clues. One of the reasons why C. Auguste Dupin, one of the reasons why Sherlock Holmes were considered to be highly intelligent detectives is because they were able to ascertain the truth from incomplete information in a way that most people couldn't. So if you want to demonstrate your intelligence, don't feign stupidity. Don't pretend not to understand what the person is almost certainly talking about. If you want to demonstrate your intelligence, demonstrate that you understand. Show the people that you understand. I'm not saying do so in a way so that you'll get a pat on the head and aren't you a smart boy. Get over it. If you're genuinely confused, then ask. If you have a pretty good idea what it means, you know what? Go with that. Or step back and look at the larger context of what the person is doing and saying, and use that to confirm your original supposition. If you do this, it'll be easier on you, and it will also be easier on everybody around you because they're not sitting there going, oh my gosh, here we go again. All I did was tell you something obvious, and suddenly we're playing 20 questions. Okay, nobody likes that. And people do not like to tell you something and then suddenly be met with question after question after question. It's not a game. It's not fun, you know. So, if you're under the illusion that spurging out about stuff, that being pedantic about stuff, and feigning cluelessness about stuff somehow makes people think you're smart, please be disabused of that notion and behave accordingly. Let's see here. These people who are always asking about exceptions are people who as kids would always raise their hands to ask obvious questions, thinking it made them look good to the teacher. I suspect that's probably true. I mean, I have noticed that it does appear to be a fundamentally, or it's behavior that seems to be mostly limited to gammas and women to a lesser extent, but more gammas than women. Not all gammas do it, but it seems that the people who do it do tend to be gammas. Do you think that Stefan Molyneux and Lauren Southern's tour of Australia and New Zealand was a strategic tactical victory or a defeat? Honestly, I have no idea. I really didn't pay too terribly much attention to it. I hope it turned out well for them. I like them both. But I just simply don't know. I don't even know enough about what happened. Why are dog owners called parents now? Is this intentionally part of the anti-child crusade? No, it's not intentionally part of it, but it is the attempt of the childless to fill the void within them. I think that they're to be more pity than condemned, because a lot of childless people did not intend or want to be childless. They were sold a bill of false goods. They were taught to put their education first, taught to put their career first, and it obviously didn't turn out very well for them or their genetic line. 121 watching, only 21 likes. It's fine. Honestly, I don't pay a whole lot of attention to the likes and dislikes. In fact, the only time I really paid any attention to it were on, I think, one of the initial Jordan Peterson videos, and on last night's video, or 2 nights ago video about the pagan stuff, just because I was thinking, I bet I'll get a lot more dislikes than normal. And sure enough, there were more dislikes than normal in those cases. That's fine. No, you may not call me by my given name. You should know that. That's actually a bannable offense on my blog. It sounds like these pedants might be intimidated by the media's perceived authority. I doubt it. Let's see here. Do you think people could gammas change to become deltas? Absolutely. On Alpha Game, there's even a guide called Graduating Gamma that's written by a delta who used to be a gamma. The single most important thing to do is to learn to tell the truth. First to others, second to yourself. The establishment press works for their deep Staat, for those who are still confused. It's becoming ever more obvious. I mean, I have a link to a post that's going up. Somebody sent me a link to the Washington Post piece about how outraged they are that the new Austrian government basically went in and shut down their intelligence agency. Now, why would the Washington Post be so concerned about a freely democratically elected government reining in what might be an out-of-control bureaucracy? I mean, they didn't play it at all. You would expect the way the paper that broke Watergate to play it. And I think that we all know why. Let's see here. You need better light bulbs. No, I don't. Why do you think it's called the Darkstream? This is how I like to work. Let's see. Are gammas naturally attracted to places like this? Great opportunity to open their mouths. Are they so naturally theatrical that they're easier to spot here? Well, gammas tend to be intelligent, and so they're naturally drawn to intelligent outlets. And this is not an ideal one for them, simply because they're not really tolerated here. They're not really, and when they act up, they're called out. But it's natural that this would, this stream, my blog, Stefan Molyneux's, it's natural that gammas would be somewhat drawn to that. I have to say that it's been interesting getting involved in the comics industry, because there's more gammas there. It's a higher concentration of gammas there than I've ever encountered anywhere. So that's definitely been an education. What is the best season of year? Autumn. Speaking of media, do you have any advice on helping young people break free from the conditioning that they are subjected to in school and receive from the media? Yes, read history. What breaks you free of the modern narrative more than anything is to read history and see how intelligent people were back then and how different things were. It tends to completely falsify almost the entire modern narrative. Let's see here. Is it possible you would write a book about the media in the future? No, I don't think so. I actually wrote part of a book called Media Horrors. In fact, I got paid to write a book called Media Horrors, and it was killed by the publisher at the demand of Fox News. And so they actually ended, I wrote like 3 or 4 chapters on it. They thought it was going to be all about left-wingers. They didn't realize it was going to be about both the left-wingers as well as people like Bill O'Reilly, Michelle Malkin, and so forth. And so they ended up killing the book and paying me not to write it. So that was that was one of my favorite jobs, to be honest. Where can I find out if I'm an alpha or a gamma? Well, the fact that you're asking is a pretty good indication in itself. Can an alpha ever change? No, alphas are always, they always have the same psychology. Their status will change, certainly, with age. But their mindset remains the same. It's the same with gammas. Even when gammas become very successful and very famous, they often retain the same mindset that they had before. Are bullies usually gammas? No. In fact, the younger that children are, usually the higher in social status the bullies are. However, when gammas achieve positions of power and responsibility, they tend to behave like bullies. I'm sorry, some of these questions crack me up. Comic book lore brings the ultra permaversion gammas even more than Star Trek lore. One of the things I had to accept was that complaining about details and inconsistencies is just something that comic readers like to do. It's very different in the gaming industry. In the gaming industry, if people are complaining about something, you have a problem. In comics, if they're complaining about something, that's actually usually a good thing, because it means they're engaged. And that's what they like to do. They like to argue about whether Superman should wear his red tights or not, or whether it's right or wrong for kryptonite of a certain color to have a certain impact. That's how they have fun, and there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to learn to let them do it, not to try to argue with them or set them straight or explain that you really meant to do that. The best thing to do is just let them have their fun. Let's see here. Reading Martin Van Creveld's essay on immigration and war was the most influential piece of literature I've ever read. Yeah, that was pretty mind-blowing for me too, especially because I asked him to write it, and I said, does immigration cause war? Does war cause immigration? What is the nature of the relationship between the two? I was not expecting none of the above to be, or all of the above, to be the answer, and rather conclusively demonstrated to be the answer. It's a real privilege to get to work with modern. Have you tried getting your old games on Steam or GOG? I thought we submitted Rebel Moon Rising to GOG, but I may not have actually finished the application. So not really. Define gamma, please. Gamma is a pattern of male behavior that is usually indicative of low social rank in the social hierarchy. These are people who are socially successful enough to be a part of the social hierarchy, but they tend to be at the bottom of it. That's it in a nutshell. How much of alpha is physical? Probably about 70% would be my guess. Thoughts on Mike Enoch? I have no thoughts on Mike Enoch. Is Peter Strzok an alpha? No. Zoe, give it up. You're just trying to ask these little gotcha questions. Please understand that I'm more intelligent than you are. Is the West Christian or Catholic? The West is predominantly Christian. You have to remember that the Catholic Church was uniquely dominant for a period of time, but it wasn't at the beginning, and obviously after the Reformation it was no longer the only game in town. Let's see. Okay, let's get rid of this idiot here. Bye, Zoe. Look, I like answering questions. I don't like answering stupid questions, and I really don't like answering gotcha questions. Please understand that I'm accustomed to intellectually sparring with people who have PhDs and are highly intelligent. So you're not going to catch me off guard. Just don't even try. If you don't believe me, read a book or two of mine. That should set you straight. You have said that it doesn't matter from a rhetorical point of view whether Q is real, but what is your personal opinion? Well, my personal opinion is that Q is probably a group of people who have access to some information that is not necessarily available to the public. What they are, who they are, I have no idea. But there clearly is one or more people called Q posting stuff. I don't think it's the same person all the time. As a writer, I think that I've noticed at least 3 different writing styles, and so but that's why I think the whole is Q real, is Q legitimate, is not necessarily relevant for multiple reasons. Is it worthwhile to red pill boomers or civic nationalists? Boomers, not so much. Civic nationalists, yes. Most civic nationalists will eventually move towards nationalism if they're not too identity complicated. Is it possible to be alpha but also be concerned with trampling gammas? Yes, of course. I mean, the good alpha likes to take care of those in his hierarchy. I'm not an alpha. I'm a sigma, and sigmas tend to naturally despise gammas. Sigmas don't really play well with others anyhow, and they tend to find gammas particularly annoying. I'm pretty conventional in that regard. What if someone isn't socially successful enough to be in the hierarchy? That's what we call an omega. If I don't agree with the Catholic Church today and not marry my girlfriend, am I doing wrong? yes, um, you should marry your girlfriend, you should have children with her, you should raise a family. That is the ideal way to do things. Are you planning on translating any more of John C. Wright's books into comics? Well, we're translating 3 of them into comics that will be 18 issues, called the Swan Knight Saga. Do you have good sources on KGB and old Soviet secrets that have been released? No, I have no sources of the kind whatsoever. Can you do a linguistic analysis to determine the voice? No, it's not that accurate. When you're writing, all you can really tell is if 2 pieces of writing are the same, or written by the same author. It's possible to fool people, but you have to be pretty good, and it's difficult. I took an IQ test and have an IQ of 132. Is this why I prefer to be alone and find the company of most people boring? It's part of it, but it's also partly because you're too narcissistic. If you've got a Mensa caliber IQ, you should be able to find a way to get along and socialize with normal people. You don't have to talk about complicated things all the time. This is why people talk about sports. If I'm talking with normal people, I talk about music and I talk about sports. There's a lot of people that know me and have known me for years who have no idea that I've ever written a single book. It's not something I talk about. I don't talk about politics with them. I don't talk about philosophy. I certainly don't talk about advanced squad leader. So, is it possible to be married before the eyes of the Lord but not the government? Yes, of course. That's what church marriage is. Okay, before we go any further, since we keep talking about comics, I should mention that we have a new comic, and I'd like you guys to consider supporting this one for an important reason. This is Gun Ghoul #1, published by Dark Legion today. It's now available on digital on Amazon, and it's written by Will Callaghan. He is the guy, the disabled military veteran, was injured in the Gulf War, and he was deplatformed at his publisher by SJWs there. And so it's doing very well, thanks to the support from the blog readers. It's already number 2. It's number 1 in 3 categories and number 2 in another. And I'll just give you a little preview here of the story. So let me see. I should have put these in order. Okay, so the story begins 5 years before. There's some sort of military mission going on, but somebody gets screwed over in a big way. And so we've clearly got some sort of operation going on here. And somebody said, "Holy Archaven art is improving." This is not Archaven. This is actually Dark Legion, which is Archaven is the stuff that we create ourselves. Dark Legion is the stuff that other creators bring to us that we publish. So something's going on apparently somewhere in Latin America. But this is all in the look inside, so that's why it's I'm not showing this to you. But somebody gets screwed in a bad way, and we don't really know why, other than he's been indicated. So 5 years later, we're in Chicago, and you've got some crime lords here, and they're getting together and they're talking about the security is very tight because something else happened to somebody else they know about. We don't know what's going on. And then suddenly this mysterious gun ghoul appears. And there's obviously something going on with him, because he seems to have a complicated relationship with the material world. And so this is the end of the preview, but it's also got some other pretty cool artwork in it. I'm actually thinking that we're going to use this one for the issue number 4 cover. So anyhow, the link to Gun Ghoul on Amazon is below the stream on YouTube, and so if you want to support this disabled military veteran, I know he'd appreciate it if you would pick up a copy, and it's a good way to support Arcaven and Dark Legion as well. I think what we're going to do is we're going to come out with this a little bit more quickly than we generally do. I think we're going to go boom, boom, boom with the 4 digital issues, and then get the 110-page paperback or whatever it is out. So, anyhow, it's, I have to admit, I'm kind of enjoying this whole comic thing. I did not expect to. I'm not a comics guy. I'm much more of a novelist. Although, what I'd love to do now is get permission to turn Haruki Murakami's A Wild Sheep Chase into a graphic novel. That would be, I think, kind of mind-blowing. So, anyhow, and things are going very well, just so you know. We expect to have some new announcements soon. It looks like we're also doing Will Callaghan's Tech Lore, and there's a good chance that we'll also be doing his next new project. So, anyhow, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for all the questions, and if you want to support the stream, it's on the bottom. And 19Q4 would be better. Yeah, that's like 1,000 pages. I wouldn't even want the whole Air Chrysalis thing and the little people. That would be one freaky comic. I'm just trying to get. I prefer A Wild Sheep Chase anyhow. That's my favorite of Murakami's novels. But the idea of doing 19Q4 is definitely amusing. So, all right. Well, have a good evening. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you at the next stream.